You're muted. I can't hear you. Sorry.
Good evening, everyone. Today we are again here for biology series. So today with us is our speaker, Dr. Chandrika Abburi. She has obtained her PhD degree from PGIMER Chandigarh. For her postdoctoral studies, she initially joined IUPUI Indianapolis, where she tested the therapeutic efficacy of stem cells in retinal degeneration disease. Later, she moved to the University of Chicago to continue her postdoctoral studies. Presently, she is assistant professor at University of Chicago, USA. Her current research focuses on the investigation of mechanisms underlying the pathophysiology of Parkinson's disease. With this introduction, I welcome Dr. Chandrika to give the presentation. Please share your slides.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so thank you for your kind introduction, Manjari, and it's my pleasure to be here and on the biological series session. And it's a great opportunity for me to talk on this topic, the impact of viral infection on the nervous system, because like we all are living in pandemic world, we know it has an impact on each and every part of our life. And we see news reports or the articles like how the coronavirus or viral infection is affecting multiple organs like lungs, kidneys, liver, heart, like whatnot, you name it. And brain is no exception. So it also leaving an impact on the nervous system too. I thought like I'll educate myself and also the general audience. So there are plenty of reports out there showing the COVID-19 patients had this altered mental state. So if you look at this news report, so this came from a study which was conducted in Chicago land area, currently where I live. So basically showing nearly 1/3 of COVID patients had altered mental state. And um, so basically this study was conducted in 509 hospitalized COVID patients. And in those patients, like some has altered mental state, but some are like have the normal brain function. And so interestingly, the patients which had this altered mental state, so they have to stay 3 times longer in hospital compared to the normal patients, so. And when they are discharged, the another interesting thing is only 32% of the patients with altered mental function were able to handle their daily routine, like buying groceries or cooking or paying their bills. In contrast, 89% of patients without altered mental function were able to manage such activities without assistance. So basically this study is showing that if you have altered mental function with this viral infection, it is significantly affecting your quality of life. And there were similar studies showing more than 80% of people hospitalized for COVID suffer these neurological symptoms, from confusion to altered brain function. And another, the news report basically highlighting the neurological complications of this virus. You can look at the title, COVID and the brain, you should be afraid. So it's basically all these studies are suggesting that the viral infection has an impact on our mental the health. So, so is it like just the acute thing, or is it going to leave any the chronic state, like on our mental health? So that is a big question. So if we look at the neurological conditions, various neurological conditions, like, from Alzheimer's to the brain injury, stroke, and various neurodegenerative disorders. So what we know is like which brain area is affected and which neurons are lost. Like, for example, if you take the Alzheimer's disease, so we know that like the hippocampus is affected, and in Parkinson's disease, it's due to the loss of dopaminergic neurons in substantia nigra. But like what we don't know is why there is loss of dopaminergic neurons in this particular disease. So because like if we look at the patient population, a small percent has the known cause of this particular disease, but like vast majority of these patients are like sporadic and or idiopathic. That means we don't know the cause of the disease. So that could be because of the pathogenic infections or exposure to the environment, like different environment, like it could be anything. But we know from the studies, viral infections causes like the inflammation of the brain, like viral encephalitis. Like here, this is the MRI from a viral infected patient. You can see the white shaded areas indicating that like there is viral encephalitis. And there is like a vast majority of studies like to understand the biology of this virus and the host immune responses. Basically this suggesting there is a link between viral infection and neurological diseases, yet we don't know like how the viral infections are causing this the neurological disease. Because like if you have the viral infection now and the whatever the subsequent like neurological conditions are happening like after 1 or 2 decades, so how the so like making a connection between this like the viral infection and the neurological condition is remain a challenging question. And brain is different compared to the other organs because the neuronal cells cannot replicate, and we need to preserve those neuronal cells throughout our life. So, and we have additional mechanism to protect our brain cells. So the one of such thing is like the blood-brain barrier. You can see here in this picture. So it has the basement membrane. Basically, this is the endothelial cells here, and pericytes and astrocyte end feeds. These all will give like extra the barrier for the diffusion of the large molecules or the pathogens into the brain. Which is good for brain health. But like some viruses make their entry into the CNS, and they have the capacity. So if you look at here, the virus, some viruses like the polio virus or the measles virus, flappa virus, they can infect these blood-brain barrier endothelial cells and can get into CNS parenchyma. It's a direct infection to the CNS. Some viruses, like they make through their way through these tight junctions, the gap junctions here, and the integrity of these tight junctions is influenced by other factors like tumor necrosis factor or the IFN. And then basically this will determine the permeability of the substances into the brain. And there is the other type of entry, which is the monocyte, like the viruses with monocytes enter into the brain. And basically the process is called Trojan horse approach. Basically HIV-1 virus use this particular approach. So this is all like directly, the virus infecting the brain cells or the brain. There is another approach of the viral entry into the CNS, which is through transsynaptic connections. So if we look at here, there are muscle cells. So basically, like the virus makes entry through this neuromuscular junction and gets into the axons of the central CNS neurons. And one best example for this is like the rabies virus. So it enters through this junction and make its retrograde the way retrogradely back to the soma, and uses the cellular mechanism here for its survival and replication. So some viruses make their entry through endothelial or the epithelial cells, and once they get into the peripheral nervous system, they can go either direction, like towards the epithelial cells or to the central nervous system, anterogradally or retrogradally, and can infect the brain. Once the virus enters into the brain, we have another protective mechanism, like our brain cells express this pattern recognition receptors, like you can see here. And both the neuronal cells and the microglia express this. And basically this induces, it will sense the virus and also immediately cause the release of some cytokines. And once the microglia are activated, it can act like it can basically act on the synaptic terminals and causes the synapse elimination, or it also like causes the restriction of viral infection, viral replication. And the released cytokines also influence the permeability of the blood-brain barrier. So with this, what happens is like it will allow peripheral immune cells to enter into the brain. So the monocytes, T cells, B cells can enter here and combat this viral infection. So this is helpful, like, to decrease the viral load and remove the viral proteins. However, this leads to neuropathology. So, and then like here, this figure is showing that some viruses has tropism, like they infect certain brain regions. And if you look at this, the flappa virus, it mostly infects the cortical neurons. And the measles virus, it mostly infects like the GABAergic and glutamatergic neurons more than like the cholinergic or the catecholaminergic neurons. And the coronavirus here, it has like more propensity towards the white matter than the gray matter. And the rotavirus, it is like high likely to infect the hippocampus than like any other brain regions, which means that, like, each virus has its the favorite region in the brain, or the particular cell types. So, and as I mentioned earlier, like, once there is viral infection, there is increased this cytokines, and they modulate the brain function through dopaminergic or the glutamatergic system. So dopamine is mainly produced in our brain in two centers. One is the substantia nigra, pars compacta, and the VTA. The substantia nigra is mainly like involved in motor control, and VTA is known for memory, motivation, and reward functions. So once these cells are affected, obviously the dopamine system is going to alter, and it can leave a differential impact on our daily activities or the, the motor function. And at this here in the hippocampus, also these interleukins affect this glutamatergic synapses, glutamate pathways, and they can affect this learning and memory, and also the neurogenesis. Um, so once after having this neuroinflammation or the through the viral infection, so for example, here in the West Nile virus, like the infection, the microglia, the surviving microglia increases the expression of complement receptors and their proteins. Basically, microglia is tagging the presynaptic terminals. Once these the presynaptic terminals are tagged with this particular proteins, they're going to be eliminated. So elimination of these presynaptic terminals will highly impact the spatial learning deficits. The other virus, the HSV, which is the herpes simplex virus. It will activate the B cells, and what it does is like it secretes the antibodies against like the proteins. Here in this case, like it is producing antibodies against like the NMDA receptors. So, and because of this, there is internalization of the NMDA receptors. However, the AMPA receptors and the PSG95 is intact, and NMDA mediated calcium is important for various functions. And because of this internalization, it causes depression, anhedonia, memory deficits. Like with all these reports, what we learn is like, after the viral infection, in a subset of viral encephalitis survivors, like you expect to see these kind of deficits basically through the mechanism of like, synaptic elimination or like, the internalization of the particular receptors. But we learn a lot from this 1918 Spanish flu pandemic. Like after this happened almost a century ago, and during that time, like whosoever was like infected with this particular virus, so after like 10 years or the 20 years, there were like clusters of this, the neurodegenerative patients, like the Parkinsonian patients. And here are some reports like clearly showing, the H1N1 influenza virus causes alpha-synuclein aggregation. The other report showing that like influenza virus can enter the central nervous system and induce neuroinflammation and neurodegeneration. Basically, all these reports suggesting that like the viral infections that we have can have a very like impact on the nervous system, can lead to neurodegenerative and other neurological diseases. And with this, I'll wrap up, and I'll happy to take any questions that you have.
Thank you for such an informative and interesting presentation. So before I move on to anyone else, I have some questions for you. So first of all, do you comment on this, that is there any genetic background? So who will develop a disease after getting a viral infection, neurodegenerative disease?
Like there is kind of propensity, like it's not one So in certain viral infections, what happens is the virus will be in the dormant phase, like for example, in ganglions, and it won't come out like until you have some kind of stress or like, some associated pathology. So definitely there is a like, the genetic correlation, and if like it's all like, all the diseases, if you have diabetes, you have more like, likely to have Alzheimer's or the Parkinson's, like these are correlated. So I would suspect that like, there is high chances of having the comorbidity of the diseases.
Can we prevent, if we acquire some viral infection, can we prevent it to turning to a neurodegeneration or neuropsychological effect?
Yeah, exactly, like that's what we have to alarm ourselves, like, but like we have to have good diagnostic tools, like, and like to identify what's happening in our brains, like after the viral infection. It's we have to be cautious, although we may be normal after like, infected with this COVID or any viral infection, but I think it's better to be cautious and look for any kind of symptoms and alarm like in the initial stages, rather than waiting till it becomes like, chronic and the adverse stage.
Basically, you should switch back to normal healthy lifestyle and quit.
Exactly. Yeah, and also like you have to keep monitoring yourself, like, if you encounter any small thing, I think it's better to be cautious. I would say
How
highly.
can how can we monitor ourselves? The test, what test we can go for? If somebody is
uh,
COVID positive now, how he can monitor for like 10 years?
so uh, um, so these patients have the mental confusion, for example, like, I'm not the expert in the field, like how to look for, I think a MD doctor or like, who is expert in the field can answer, but and definitely like, you see the change. That's how like, right, like this is my routine and this is how normally I look, and now something is like kind of like I'm not able to focus more, or like I'm not able to like it looks like I have some memory deficits or something like that, you can always look for those, and maybe be cautious. If I'm the person, like I would do that.
Okay, okay, thank you. So if anyone else has some question, we can ask. Okay, I think no. So thank you again for a wonderful presentation, and thank you for accepting our invitation and giving us the opportunity to learn about the effects of viral infection on our system. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Yeah, me too. Thank you.